Hello, everyone. Welcome to Travel Explore Celebrate Life, our first episode of 2023. So, I'm here, Neil, and I'm joined by Sunila. Sunila,
Hi.
welcome to Travel Explore Celebrate Life. I guess from the both of us, we would start by saying a very happy new year to you and your family. May 2023 be filled with love, joy, happiness, and everything that makes you celebrate life, like we say at Veena World. So, on today's episode, we thought we'll start with something that we haven't covered over the last 2 years of our podcast. And that is discussing New Year traditions from all over the world. And also, with New Year traditions come resolutions. And one thing that invariably is on most resolutions is something about travel. So we like, if you have been reading our newsletter from last week, we mentioned that often people say that my bucket list is to travel more. And people don't be specific, people don't be realistic. So today we are going to discuss, of course, New Year traditions, but we are also going to discuss how to create your travel bucket list, what should be on your travel bucket list, and
Mhm.
how do you push yourself to achieve that travel bucket list. Because as we have seen in gyms all across the world, the first week is crowded and suddenly everyone
Mhm.
forgets their resolutions and the second week is empty. So maybe today is the first week of 2023 ending, and that is why we were like, it's a good point to actually make your resolutions in the second week, because the first week of making resolutions and forgetting about them is done, so you can make solid resolutions. So Sunila, let's begin with New Year celebrations. Of course, we have seen New Year celebrations across the world where there are fireworks on the Sydney Harbour Bridge, there's the Burj Khalifa setting itself, giving viewers an incredible show. There's the ball drop in Times Square. Everyone knows about
Mhm.
them. So I don't want to cover the mainstream ones. And
Mhm.
I know how much research you put in when we decide on a theme, and I'm sure you've put in a lot of that. But before that, I'd like to ask you, apart from India, apart from Mumbai, where we live, where all have you spent New Year's Eve?
Neil, good question. And first of all, a very, very happy new year to everybody. Yes, New Year's brings in, the New Year always brings in a lot of hope. And I think the end of December, from say about mid-December, it's really difficult to focus on work and keep going because there's just so much celebration happening. There's always
That's
something
true.
or the other. The weather is amazing throughout the world, whether you're in the Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere. I think the weather's just amazing at this time of the year. And the very cold winter has not yet set in, which is Jan, Feb, and March mainly. So it's a beautiful time to be everywhere. And yes, for New Year's, I've actually been in London, but that's not my most memorable New Year's, I would say.
Was it
This
cold?
happened twice, of course, because I was living there. No, I was actually there for the millennium, so it was extra
Oh,
special because
wow.
it was not just the New Year's, but it was from 99 we were changing into 2000s, and a lot of things didn't really go right which was supposed to go right. And that actually brings me to the point that if you're going to be out to celebrate New Year's, then make sure that you've planned properly. Make sure that you have everything in order, because I went by the Thames to look at, there was supposed to be a wall of fire. The London Eye was supposed to start working at the stroke of midnight, and they had a glitch, so it actually didn't really move. We were all crowding there and waiting. The London Tube, the underground, was supposed to be free that night, but they shut off the stations because to control the crowd. So
Yeah.
I actually ended up walking hungry and tired for like 2 hours before I could go anywhere. I lost my friend in the crowd. So it was very adventurous New Year. But I realized after that, whenever you want to celebrate New Year's, then you must celebrate it with a good amount of planning. Like we had booked someone for through our customized holidays for to celebrate it in Australia, and they had an amazing time. Two ways they planned to be. There are certain areas where you can go and watch the fireworks. A lot of times some places are paid, some places you can just be out there and enjoy, but you have to make sure you reach there early, make sure you have food with you, and make
Mhm.
sure you have access to restrooms and the other things, and then you can really enjoy your New Year's very well. So that was my eventful New Year. But after that, I think I learned my lesson, and the last 22 years I've enjoyed my New
Didn't
Year's everywhere.
didn't you spend New Year's with Sarah in Singapore once?
Yes, I did. And that
Yeah,
was
right.
amazing because I was ready for it and I knew what was happening. So we had planned for it. We were at the Mandarin Oriental, and because they have the best view of the fireworks. So, of course, with the New Year's, when you're at a hotel, then usually you have to take in their special menu or the special celebration menu. But they went all out with the whole range of food items and other things. Of course, it also rained a little bit, but no one's spirits were damped. We were really enjoying. So, and my friend was living in Singapore, so it was fun. It was her and her daughter and me and my daughter, and we all four of us had a really good time at New Year's. So, New Year planning and celebrations around the world can be fantastic, but do make sure that you've planned in advance and you have the best view and the best seat.
So I spent one New Year's in Japan, one New Year's in
Mhm.
Singapore. And when I did that in Singapore, I was very young, so I don't even remember many of those things. But
Mhm.
Japan was all alone in the mountains of Japan. And the Japanese tradition for New Year's is very different, where you just go for a quiet family dinner on the 31st.
Mm.
And I had two friends with me who like were also skiing. So we just saw fireworks in the mountains at the hotel, small
Nice.
show. And it is said that the Japanese tend to visit the temple on the first day of the year or on the last day of the year. And as a result, New Year's in Japan means that everything will be closed. And if you're traveling around there, it is often like thought of that,
Mm.
oh, everything will be open, people will be partying, but it's the
Mm.
opposite. Like most places in Japan are closed. And I think you were telling me there is this tradition of giving warm soba noodles on
Yes.
the first day of the new
I think
year,
that
right?
goes with what you're saying, Neil, because what I had heard and what I've read is that they celebrate the kick of the new year with a warm bowl of soba noodles. And the logic was that because the long, thin noodles are firm and yet it's, easy to bite, they say that it symbolizes breaking away because you break the noodles when you eat them. So you break off from something old and you get into something new. And also, they do hand out a lot of soba noodles to the poor or something so that everyone has warm food. And I think from what you say, the whole idea of celebrating with the family, it does go hand in hand. In fact, in Japan, they also have this tradition where the Buddhist temples in Japan, they ring their bells on New Year's Eve. Some places I've read 107, some places I've read 108 times. I do think it is 108 times because 108 is a special figure even in India, right? And
Mm-hmm.
Buddhism and India and Japan are connected. So I'm sure there was some connect there because they say that any human has 108 evil desires in every person. And so when you ring the bells, you're cleansing yourself of the last year's sins that you may have committed or thought of or whatever. So it's a good way to ring in and bring in the new year. And like when we do, for example, in India in yoga, you do Surya Namaskar. 108 is the magical figure that if can you achieve that, can you do that? A
In
lot
one
of our
shot.
shlokas, well, that would be difficult probably, but yes, that's what they say. A lot of the shlokas and other things also recite in 108 times. So I feel maybe Hinduism, Buddhism is related somewhere, and probably this is the connect we see from time to time. But it's really interesting how nicely, quietly Japan brings in the new year, and yes, the ringing of the bells.
So that's Japan. And when someone asks me which are your top three cities in the world, I often say Tokyo, Melbourne, and Copenhagen. And when I speak of
Mhm.
Copenhagen, in Denmark, they have a ritual of smashing plates, right? So
Yes.
what people go around doing is that they just go around breaking dishware on the doorsteps of family and friends. And it is said that on the first day of the year, the more shards that are in front of your home, the luckier or more likely
You
that
just
you are
have
going to
more
be.
friends probably, right? Like
Yeah,
you,
exactly.
which means you're a happy person. So nice.
But then, there's a funny thing to it where they say that, you know, just limit it to breaking dishware or smashing dishware at the doorstep.
Uh-huh.
Because back in the day, some people started throwing dishware at
Okay.
people's houses. And the dishware didn't break, but the windows did. And like all of the other things that they had at the exterior of the house or the facade of the house started breaking. So Denmark has
Wow.
a very different, I would say, New Year tradition because everyone talks about New Year
Denmark
parties.
for
Yeah.
me, Neil, has always felt like a very quiet, peaceful place. So it's like on New Year's, they
Yeah.
seem to be getting all
Imagine.
their angst out. I mean, smashing plates and
Yeah. And,
wow.
like speaking of that, people often talk about where do I want to spend New Year's? I think we could
Mm.
change that question and go like, what New Year tradition do I want to witness this year? And
True.
because we're
That's a
going to
good
list down
point.
many, right now, you could easily do at least 20 to 25 countries where you just go and witness New Year traditions. And I think that's pretty cool,
True.
right?
Yeah, and I
So,
think that's
yeah,
that's a great starting point to build your bucket list, right? I mean,
yeah,
25 New Year celebrations around the world, and how many places, like we often say, have you visited 50 countries? Because that's a good benchmark to have 25 countries. How many countries? So I think this is a new list. How many New Year celebrations, how many countries have you visited for their New Year traditions?
yeah, I
And
think,
yeah, it's nice
yeah.
to start adding to that to the list.
Yeah, and it's great weather most like everywhere, right? So
Yes,
that's good. So
absolutely.
speaking of traditions, what comes to your mind? Like
Neil,
another
you
country?
mentioned
Yeah.
smashing dishes. So the first thing that comes to my mind when you talk of smashing dishes are actually the Greek. You know, I was in a Greek restaurant in Melbourne when I went there last year. I did the whole, self-drive tour with Ashwini from our products department, and we drove through before putting in the itinerary for our Australia tour. And when we were in Melbourne, the captain of our coach company, he's Greek, so he's of Greek origin, and he said, "Today I want to make sure you have a great time. We worked so hard for the last week." So he took us to a Greek restaurant, and it was a very nice traditional restaurant. And after eating, they were smashing plates on the floor. Of course, in the restaurant, they had special plates made for that, and they actually danced on it. So I thought this is amazing. And I had seen the same thing at my friend's wedding, who's Greek, who she's Greek American, but I went to Athens for a wedding. And the same thing after the celebration, this was a way to celebrate, was to smash a plate and dance on it. So
Hmm.
it's amazing how they celebrate special events and functions. But the Greek at New Year's have a very different tradition. And what they actually do is, because they believe in rebirth, and onions actually are a symbol of rebirth, they hang onions on the doors. So this is said to promote growth throughout the new year. So that is something that the Greeks do, because the onion, it when it grows, it holds its roots firmly in the ground, and it only grows up. So that is why it's considered a symbol of growth, and that's why the Greek have onions hanging on their doorsteps, which is quite amazing.
So,
Oh,
like speaking of food items, many countries
mhm.
tend to have food related traditions where
Yes.
it involves eating food. But in Ireland, they have a very different thing. So they take their Christmas bread because it's the
Mhm.
Christmas time of the year.
Yes.
And instead of eating that bread, the whole tradition is and they have those big breads, like think of a sourdough
Mm.
bread or something like that. Smashing the bread on your house wall is the New Year tradition or the Christmas
Mhm.
tradition that they have, because it's supposed to chase away all of the bad spirits out of the house to start the new year off on a clean slate. But I can also
Wow.
imagine how messy it could get, because it could mess up your wall, it could mess up your house. But the Irish have an interesting tradition like this. So, like, you spoke of Greece, we spoke of Denmark, and of course we are going to go like
Yeah.
bouncing off
And even
countries
in
left.
Ireland, they
Yeah.
do one more thing, and especially the women. It's customary. They say that those who are single women, sleep with a mistletoe under the pillow, hoping
Oh,
to find the future love of their life. So I don't know if
it's
that really works, but
yeah, it's like,
yeah.
the New Year's is always, I often
Yeah.
wonder, like, one of my resolutions that I set, and I like movies, right? Was that
Mhm.
2022, I didn't end up watching all those many movies. So I set a very realistic thing for me, which was
Uh-huh.
I want to watch at least two movies this month. And two movies,
Okay.
like by going to the cinema hall or the movie theater, two movies. So two movies is easy. And then I was just wondering that, setting such a resolution need not wait until January. You could set it up in
Hmm.
November or October and start
True.
doing that. But again, it brought to my mind going back to Denmark. What they do also is that they like to leap into the new year. So when the clock strikes
Okay.
12, everyone tends to stand on their
Jump.
chairs and then they want to jump. So it's basically leaping into the new year, and they literally do that. So that's crazy, right? Here, many
Yeah.
people are just thinking of New Year's as, oh, let's have our glasses, toast to the new year, cheers, done, and hugging everyone. But like this is also
You know,
a
the
very,
more we
yeah.
speak about it, I like your idea of visiting countries to celebrate and bring in and learn New Year traditions and actually be there when people are doing that.
Yeah,
I think that's just really nice.
because
Yeah,
fireworks are
leaping
one
into
thing,
New
but the
Year. Yeah,
participating in the in a country's culture,
local
exploring that
culture. Yeah.
is what really matters. And I think that push towards that also is great. And people should like start putting that on their travel list also. And we do that a lot in our tours, where we see the culture of a particular country. But I can see that you have something on your mind, so tell.
Yes, I'm just thinking that, we spoke about visiting places for New Year's and doing new traditions. One place where you'll really be welcome, like more than me, you would be really, really welcome on New Year's Eve if you take with you some salt, coal, shortbread, and whiskey. If you
Hmm.
take all of these items, you would be really welcome very well. And that place is Scotland. So in Scotland, Neil, on New Year's Day, it's so important for them that they have an official name for it. They call it Hogmanay. And they have
Hmm.
many traditions. The Scottish have a lot of traditions, right? But this is called first footing. So what they
Okay.
wish for is on New Year's Day and New Year's Eve, if a dark-haired male enters the house with all of these items as gifts, then it is supposed to bring them good luck for the entire year. So you would be a very welcome person should you carry shortbread, whiskey, coal, and salt, like the basics that you need to run life. Scotland would be a great place for that. And then I was really curious that why male and why dark-haired male.
Hmm.
So apparently, the belief comes from, the Scottish always fought with the Vikings and the Vikings came from Scandinavia and they were blonde and they always would come in and there would be a lot of wars with Scotland. And I guess the Vikings always won. So the Scottish feel that if a dark-haired male comes in with all of this, then it will bring them protection and it will bring them good luck. So that is
you
one
know
place you should
you
be.
are you are talking about someone entering the house, right? But I'll shift like and jump to Puerto Rico. And in
Uh-huh.
Puerto Rico, what they do is, a New Year tradition is throwing water out of the house. So basically they believe that dumping a
Holy New
bucket
Year.
out of the window like drives away all of the
Wow.
evil spirits. And
Wow.
you know you would say that, okay, like you're just throwing out water out of the house or like your apartment. It would be unfair on the people walking down,
Mm.
right? But like
Yeah.
they have this tradition, and they have a tradition of one trying to chuck out the evil spirits out of the house, but also welcoming good luck in. And to welcome good luck in, they want to welcome good luck in with something sweet. As a result, there is this tradition also in Puerto Rico that you sprinkle sugar outside your house, and it is assumed that the sweetness will bring good luck into the new
Good
year.
luck.
So yeah, that's Puerto Rico. What else comes to your mind?
Neil, you said water, and what brings that to my mind is, while the northern hemisphere is in winter, the southern hemisphere has summer out there, and I'm really sure this is going to be one of the visually the most amazing New Year's, because in Brazil, what people do is they wear white for peace and good luck, and they go to the ocean because it is summer. So they go
Yeah,
to
it's
the
supposed
seas.
to be a good luck thing, right?
Yes, it's a
Yeah.
good luck thing. And they have white flowers and candles, and they like how we do it in the rivers when we go to Varanasi or the other places where we offer an offering to the river. Similarly, they offer flowers and candles to the ocean. And they also have one more tradition that they try to jump 7 waves and they make 7 wishes, when they're
Hmm.
jumping the 7 waves. So so don't be surprised if you go to Brazil and you see everybody dressed in white and candles and flowers everywhere. I'm just thinking it would be so stunning and so peaceful and so beautiful to see
You
everybody
know,
dressed in
one
white when they're going there.
one of the good things is that when everyone dresses in white, photos come out very nice,
Yes.
right? Like white clothes. With everyone dressed in white. I saw that in
Yeah.
Spain also, when the entire town was
Was white.
ready for the running of the Bulls festival.
Oh yeah.
And like the
Yes.
photos come out nice. So maybe like one of the traditions could be that when you meet for your first meal with the family, everyone dresses a particular color. It could be anything you decide, and at Veena World, yellow is our color, right? So we probably decide everyone wears yellow. But like that could be one interesting tradition. Pausing traditions for a bit. Okay.
Hmm.
uh, I'm sure you have some travel resolutions in mind. What?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So, like, with resolutions, bringing good luck means we can travel more. So, what are some of the travel resolutions that you have in mind?
Neil, for next year, when I sit down to make a travel resolution, and I do this every year, I feel sometimes I have to work the other way around, where I have to put in the months that I don't travel, rather than,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the opposite of doing a travel resolution. I have to say, no, these are the months that I will not travel, whatever happens. And so my first resolution actually is not to travel in January and February, and to only start traveling from March. I've already kind of turned down two places that I thought I would visit, but with us, it kind of can get the other way around, where, of course, we're out working for work and for business. So we have to be out traveling. I would say my travel resolution is more really for the leisure resolution and not for work, because work travel just keeps coming up again and again. So the first thing I do is decide when not to travel, because maybe I'm needed back here at work, at home, and the other things. And then I have the rest of the calendar and my months free for when I can travel. The next thing I do, Neil, is to really put in the travel dates for all the events, exhibitions, and other things that we would participate in as Veena World. So, World Travel Mart, which happens in London every year in November. So those are the dates that go in. ITB Berlin, for example, or the other places, so that I know that I'm not missing the most important things. And then I'm thinking maybe I will add on 2-3 days along with that, so that along with the business travel, I can also have 2 days of holidays or leisure, so that I get to see more of the surrounding places around it. And I think that's a great way for business people to travel. Otherwise, you're always complaining that I don't have enough time or enough holidays. But wherever you go, if you add on 1 or 2 days, that works. And my third travel resolution is the one resolution I've made, the one place that I would like to visit is with my friends. Last year we did Berlin, Vienna, Prague, Budapest, and we just couldn't have enough. So right there and then last year we decided, let's lock in the dates for next year. So maybe around September, October, roughly between the 2 months, once we know what's happening with everyone else, we lock in the dates. And this year we've decided to visit Greece and the Greek islands, at least one island that is something different. So yeah, that's on my list.
You mentioned Berlin and Vienna, which is Germany and Austria, right? Well,
Yeah.
there is a New Year tradition over there that, like,
Uh-huh.
there are a few different lucky symbols that you can gift your friends and family to bring in good fortune. Now, these include pigs, mushrooms, chimney sweeps, and you can just buy them as lucky charms, and you get them at
Mhm.
the Christmas markets all across Germany, right? And some of them are also edible ones, so they are made out of marzipan. So they also, that's a very simple tradition, nothing to
Mm.
witness over there, but they follow it to the T. And you'll often see people in Germany and Austria in fact, doing that. And speaking of resolutions, I mentioned it in the newsletter that we sent, right? One resolution that I have is that Maharashtra has so many forts. Like, Maharashtra has
Right.
close to
Right.
350 forts, and I've trekked a few, but I
Yeah.
wanted to set a realistic resolution. And I set a realistic resolution that I will go for at least one trek this year in Maharashtra. Now, that could be a
That's
fort close to
doable.
Mumbai. Yeah,
That's
that's
doable.
doable, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mentioned it in that newsletter that I don't want
Uh-huh.
to do two, I don't want to do three, because I want to be
Well,
realistic.
if you do more, it's welcome, but
Yeah,
at least
exactly.
get your resolution through with one, right?
Yeah. So that that is kind of on the cards. And another one that I have on the cards, but it's going to be a long shot, is that a few weeks ago we did an episode with our friend Sajid Khan, who
Mm.
works at Fiji Airways, and
Yes.
he told me a lot about Fiji and how Fiji, like,
Mm.
has developed over time, and how it becomes a good opportunity when you visit Australia, or when you visit
Yeah.
Australia and New Zealand, that you can do a side trip, or what we call a post tour holiday at Veena
Yeah.
World. So that is on the cards, but that is going to be the long shot where I may or may not be able to complete it. But let's see, who
Yeah,
knows?
Fiji sounds so exotic, Neil. It sounds so amazing. And I think what Sachit said was perfect. It's right that, you know, sometimes we think of these exotic destinations and we feel that it's going to take me so long to get there. But if you're planning an Australia holiday or you're planning a New Zealand holiday, then you just have to add on a few more days and you can easily visit one of these. And because I feel like because these destinations are so far away, there is more purity, more natural beauty. The water is clearer. There are lesser people out there, and you can really enjoy a beautiful holiday. So do add it on along with some other destination, and it can become a reality. So I think that's a very good tip there.
Yeah, like that really makes sense, right? But another thing that just came to my mind, I did not have it on the research
Mhm.
notes that we've done for this
Okay.
episode, was that just talking about being in countries.
Uh-huh.
But how would New Year's be if you're up in the air? Like when
That's
you're
interesting.
at 35,000 feet, I don't really know how New Year's would be. So one time, just one time, some like, sometime in my life, like I want to be in an airplane, on a long haul
Yeah.
airplane,
And
because
but which it depends on. Okay,
which
so
time
that is
zone,
interesting. Exactly.
which
Where are you
time
going to
zone,
be
right? So
and
you don't know.
what do you follow?
Exactly. That's the cool part of it. Like, see,
What do
if you're
you
going from
follow?
Mumbai to Delhi, okay, like you're in the same time zone and the crew might wish you and all of that. But
Yes,
I want to see how New Year's would be on a flight from Mumbai to New York, for that matter. And it's a
that's pretty
weird,
interesting.
weird
Yeah.
um, thing to have on your list, but it just came to my mind because one of my resolutions is to try and do at least one flight on, like, each aircraft type. So the A380 or the 747 and all of that. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay, like what other traditions do you have?
Yeah,
Like,
technically, if you like, if your flight takes off at around say 11 o'clock or so, you would keep getting the from Mumbai. Then somewhere it'll be 12, and by the time you will reach New York, you would have celebrated many different New Years on the way that you could,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And,
Wow.
speaking of that, I was just reading up about a Korean Air aircraft, which
Uh-huh.
took off in 2023 and landed in 2022. So
That's
it
interesting.
was basically
Going
flying.
back in time.
Yeah, it was
But yeah,
basically
back to the future.
flying
Yeah.
from Seoul, where, like, Japan, Korea,
Yeah.
Australia, New Zealand
Yeah.
are the countries where they celebrate New Year's first. So New
Yes.
Year's was celebrated there, and then it took off in 2023, and it went over to the US, where it was still 2022. So
Amazing.
yeah, that's
Amazing.
like going back in time, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, Neil. So, like going on, you mentioned the New Year resolutions, right? Or travel resolutions, let's say. And I think this is the time that we do that. And you're absolutely right. Like you mentioned, it's sometimes we just make so many resolutions and nothing comes through. So, what I decided this year was to have like a wish list and then
Mm-hmm.
only pick out one or two and say that these are the two things that I will absolutely do, and the others stay on my wish list. So, if it's possible, then I will visit that. And I think December 2023 will tell me how many of those I could actually tick off. So, one more place that I had been planning to go with Sarah, my daughter, is Spain. And I really love that country. There's just so much to do there. And which actually brings me to the New Year, New Year tradition, which is also quite interesting. And they celebrate their New Year. They kick it off by eating 12 grapes. And you have to eat the 12 grapes, when the clock strikes 12, with every stroke, you eat one grape and you have to finish eating it during that time. And they say that this symbolizes each strike of the clock has to be one grape, and it's believed to ward off evil and bring you prosperity and good luck again. So I think it's a very doable tradition, very easy to do, and Spanish wines are pretty famous, so Spanish grapes are also going to be amazing. So I think that's really quite a nice tradition, and a nice way to ring in the new year by having 12 grapes on the 12 strokes of the clock. So yeah,
You know, in
Spain is
in
something.
in to speak, moving from grapes to fish, many countries they think that because fish only swim in one direction, right? That is forward.
Uh-huh.
They don't
Yeah,
never swim back, right? Which is like the
correct.
movement of time. Having a fish meal as your first meal or your last meal of the previous year is considered a good omen. It's good fortune. So because you're just going to move forward. Well, I was like, okay, like, I don't mind doing
That's
this
interesting.
every year
Yeah.
because I love
Yeah.
fish. And like, that might be a very valid thing, I would say. So yeah, that,
And there are so
yeah.
many traditions with food, right? Like you have fish, you have soup in Japan, you have the grapes, and we mentioned Denmark. So Denmark and Norway also have the krans cake. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's something like the krans cake. And this is like 18 layers of ringed, like a ring cake, and then they put it all together with this icing. It's quite interesting to look at. It looks really funny, and then they have that as a tradition for New Year's Eve and some other celebrations as well. So you could actually keep eating all through the New Year's and really keep enjoying that as well. So
Yeah.
it's amazing that
What
things
was
you
that
can do.
funny story about like underwear that you were telling me? Like,
Yes. So a lot of countries actually pay a lot of attention to what color underwear they wear,
uh-huh.
for New Year's. And there are specific colors. So it depends on what you want to achieve, and you can have that color. So the Italians, we know they are the passionate people, right? And going by what they are, they like to wear, it is said that they like to wear red colored underwear because red is the color associated with passion and fertility. And especially people who are trying to conceive for a child would always wear red when on New Year's Eve. In Argentinians are said to wear pink for the color of love. So if they're looking for love, then December 31st, they'll be wearing pink underwear. Red also in Turkey is again something that they do. And Mexicans and Bolivians are said to wear yellow underwear because yellow is meant to be for luck. So if they're looking for luck, then they wear yellow underwear. And typically around the Mediterranean areas, they all believe in wearing red, like we've seen with Turkey and Italy and all of that. And Brazilians, we already discussed, they wear white. So yeah, so white, red, yellow, or pink. What color are you going to be on New Year's is something that well, I guess
Next
no
New
harm in
Year's,
trying.
yeah,
No harm
next
in
New Year's,
trying.
I'll think about that. And while you were saying
Yes.
that you were going from country to country, I remember one tradition was that in Turkey, like
Uh-huh.
it is a good uh thing where pomegranates, right? You can
Yes.
eat them and eating them is great, but
Yeah.
if you really want to have a great 2023, they say that smash the fruit on your doorstep, and the more
Wow.
pieces there are and the further that they spread, the more prosperous you're going to be. And
Oh, wow.
like Turkey also has this thing that for a little additional good luck that you may want in that
Uh-huh.
year, you could sprinkle a little salt on your doorstep. So there are some
Oh.
countries, like we discussed, put sweet, which is sugar, but here,
Uh-huh.
like they have this salt to bring in peace and all of that. So yeah, like we've discussed many things, and like we've been discussing for the last 25 minutes.
Mhm.
Like we could continue going on, but what how would you like to spend the last 5 minutes of our episode discussing?
I have two more things to share.
Okay.
And the first one is Estonia, because you mentioned about eating at New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
And in Estonia, if breakfast, lunch, dinner, if these things are not enough for you, then head out to Estonia, because people here believe that you should have multiple meals on New Year's. So typically, they believe that eating 7, 9, or 12 meals will
Mm-hmm.
bring you good things, in the year to come. And these numbers are considered lucky. So go head out to Estonia and have the meal of your lives, or the meals of your life, and have 7, 9, or 12 meals out there, so you can keep eating and eating and eating in different ways. And I'll come to my favorite tradition, I think, which is so too for us, because we love to travel. And
Mm-hmm.
this is Colombia. So what they
Uh-huh.
do in Colombia is they take suitcases, and there was some confusion about whether the suitcase should be new, should it be filled, or should it be empty. But a lot of people say it doesn't matter. So they actually take out old suitcases, or new or whatever, but empty suitcases, and they just go outside their door, and they walk around the block, up and down, up and down, up and down, in the hope that they will travel a lot in the coming year. So some people even pull out the suitcases and just go around, walk around them at home. But I think this is really amazing to take out a suitcase and walk around the house, and hoping that this tradition will bring you lots of travels for the New Year. So that's my favorite tradition. And I think I'm going to follow that whether I'm in Colombia or not. So every year I'm going to do that.
Well, that really makes sense, Sunila, because more travels means more happiness, more celebration
Yes.
of life, like we say. So I think this is a good point to end it, where we discussed traditions from all across the world. And we also discussed our resolutions for this year, which were
Mhm.
specific and more importantly, realistic. So, listeners,
Yes.
if you have your resolutions or you have any traditions that we missed out, and because we know that we've missed out many, and there are many within India, there are many across the world that we may have not done it, write to us at sunila@veenaworld.com or neil@veenaworld.com and tell us what how you would like to spend the end of this year, because there's still 12 months left to plan the New Year's Eve party wherever you're going to do it. So might as well make sense. And Sunila, one thing I'd like to take up on the next episode is actually someone wrote to me saying that they have an infant and
Uh-huh.
they want to know what are the tips and tricks that
Okay.
one should look for when we are taking an infant around the world, and what are some of the
Right.
destinations that we should do. So we'll do that on either Travel, Explore,
Sure.
Celebrate Life, or our other podcasts, which are Chalo Bag Bharo Nikal Pado, or 5 Minute Travel Tips, or Know the Unknown, or Travel Khatta. But we'll certainly take care of that. So listeners and
Definitely.
viewers, do keep writing to us with all of these things, because we'd love to take these topics. And this topic of New Year traditions was just one listener writing to us to do an episode on New Year. So we decided to theme it this way. We hope you liked it, and thank you for listening to this episode. We will see you the next time. Have a great day ahead. Have a great week. Bye bye.